This point, you are 4 months or so into that Monroe farmers market. There's been highs, there's been lows. How's it feel at this point when you look at that as a not necessarily that market, but the farmers market as a key stepping stone to where you wanna go for you with your farm business, your farm career? A farmers market's a crucial stepping stone for that. How does that particular market feel given the key role it plays in the success of your farm?
I think for this year, it's been perfect. Like it hasn't been so like big and competitive that I just disappear into the background. But it also hasn't been like so slow and maybe new that I'm just like it's just riding the struggle bus every single week. It's really fallen into this nice place where it's if I'm more dialed in and I have an opportunity to make a little bit more money, or if I'm a little slow, or maybe I've had a couple of off weeks and I don't have as much to bring. It's still been good because I'm still staying competitive with everybody else. And then obviously being a bit of a different farm, I'm standing out because I'm bringing a little bit more of unique stuff that's out of season, and I can stand out as a premier farm because I'm charging a little bit higher prices and I'm packaging things a little better and I'm just like presenting myself a little better overall. And so it really has felt like the perfect sort of like first year incubator type farmers market. When it's a close knit group, everyone's been really nice. Nobody's like overly competitive and like nasty. Everyone like wants to help each other out and make sure it's really great. Yeah, I couldn't have picked a better market to start off at for sure.
But is it the
Yeah,
market for next year?
I hesitate to count my eggs before they hatch. And by the time this episode airs, I don't know, maybe the decision won't have been made. But if I were to predict the future, oh man, it's tough to say, but I'm probably leaning like 60-40 no. And that's partially because I've been extended the invite to potentially join a bigger market. I don't know how much I want to get into it because obviously a lot can happen between now and March. But I was invited to join the big farmers market in Athens over the winter. They do like a January, February market, which is awesome because the Monroe market ends in December. And frankly, it's like kind of January, February, March. I had really no idea. I was like, I guess hopefully restaurant sales and like kind of online sales would be good enough that it can get us through the hunger gap there until like farmers market kicks back in the spring. And but I think that'll be a good indicator of what next year will look like. If the winter market's good, it feels good, like it just feels like a good vibe and like a good group of farmers that I'm interacting with, then depending on where production is at next year, let's just say I'd be able to make a lot more money there
Yeah.
probably than where I'm at currently.
I mean, we
If
touched
anybody from the Monroe market's listening, I'm sorry, I love you. I'm not predicting the future. We'll see what happens.
would it be A or B? Like it's mutually exclusive, it's one or the other?
I think, yeah. I don't think there's any way we would have to really be kicking ass to be able to do both. And
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe we'll see. Maybe by then we have the best winter any farm has ever had, and we've got people and I can staff 2 markets and we're making it all happen. But as of now, just knowing myself and my bandwidth mentally and physically, it'll probably be an A or a B.
Okay. Yeah, I wanna dig in on this, evaluating your farmer's market experience, because I think many growers could find themselves here, they're at a market. How do you think about it? It could seem good, it could seem bad. There's trends, obviously, you've seen it high weeks, you've seen low weeks, some of it's due to you, some of it's due to the market, but you have to make decisions because eventually you're gonna have to start researching other markets, reaching out to other markets, make some sort of plan, maybe recommit to this market because they want to know. If you look at just this market, if I gave you 3 times every week, like all of a sudden now I was like three times in your inventory. I'm the magic vegetable fairy. And every Friday it's like whatever you harvested, I triple it. Would your sales go up?
They wouldn't triple.
Yeah.
They might I honestly don't even know if they would double. It depends. But yeah, I mean, they would go up, but I don't think not they wouldn't correlate with the amount of product that I have.
So it's not really a product shortage problem. It's not that you're not bringing enough. You could bring, sounds like you could bring more, but bringing a ton more isn't going to bring a ton more revenue in.
No, yeah. Yeah, it would, I think at the end of the day, we are limited in the at least with this summer. We'll see what this fall holds because this spring was awesome. This past spring, the first month of the farmer's market, yeah, if the magical vegetable fairy would have brought me 3 times as much stuff, I probably could have done over $1,000 every week, which isn't it's still not tripling it, but it would have been enough to really make it worth it. And maybe the fall will be the same. Maybe it's just summer is slow, but I there is like a critical mass that I feel like we've reached where it's like there's a ceiling that we have hit, or I can see where the ceiling is that could get hit. And it's just the sheer amount of people that are coming that kind of is the limiting factor.
Not enough foot traffic going by the booth because you're only going to get some percentage of that foot traffic that stops and becomes a customer. So
Yeah.
you increase that volume, assuming a fixed ratio, right? More customers, more sales.
Yeah.
When you think about a banging spring, a dead summer, you really got to look at averages, right? This is like sports, and the Lakers play out here. D'Angelo Russell, people love him and hate him because he's amazing one week, and then the next week you're like, this guy's terrible. So you have to look at the average out stats over time in sports. Do you think it's important to look at, because I hear you saying like spring was amazing, summer's kind of fall could be amazing. Where it's, do you need to look at like the average sales across every market? And let's say they come out at 25, right? Because then that gives you a picture of where you're at. Because an amazing spring, but a really terrible summer could mean a terrible market, right? For you at the end of the day, if that total amount of money
Yeah.
doesn't get you to where you need to be. So like looking at the trend across all.
Yeah, and I think it's at some point you have to just decide how big or how small of a snapshot you're gonna wanna look at. Are we talking monthly? Are we talking quarterly, annually, whatever? At some point, you have to say, "This is the size of a picture that we're gonna look at to determine if this was a success or a failure." And I would say, yeah, being able to look at it after a full season will give me a better idea because also haven't really had a chance to go to a whole lot of farmers markets. And frankly, I don't really have a whole lot of time to talk to other market farms and say, hey, is summer usually slow for you? Is this my market in particular, or is this just summer in Georgia where it's 95 degrees by 11:30 a.m. in the morning and it's just so hot that people just don't want to come out? And if that's the case, then it's like, oh, so once we realize no matter what market I'm at, it's probably going to slow down for summer. So maybe we just scale back production. Maybe instead of scaling back for winter as much as maybe someone in the higher latitude, we keep production at a slightly higher clip for winter. And summer is when we take our little bit of a breath and take our kind of our lull. And then we really crank it through spring and fall. And then winter, we just try to push it as much as we can. And so it could be one of those things where it's just we haven't found what our long term rhythm is. And I think right now it's just too early for me to make that distinction on if summer just sucks or if summer in Monroe is just meh.
Yeah. At what point do you have to start exploring other markets if you did want to move on? Would you reach out now for 2025? Is that November? Because you obviously you don't want to wait till last minute. You want to get your name in there as soon as possible. Like when do you start fishing around? I know you said a market reached out to you or you got an invite, but outside of that, if you wanted to build in contingencies of what else is around, when do you start doing that?
I think from the other markets that I looked at, a lot of like applications and stuff open like end of the year, very beginning of the year. Maybe this market, because I want to say it starts in March. I think it starts pretty early. Maybe it's a little different. But even with the winter market in Athens, I asked them like, oh, yeah, because as soon as they reached out to me, I was like, all right, tell me what I need to do. Let's get the ball going in here. And they're like, oh, we're not really going to even talk about the winter market until November. So even with that, you have some time, and that's winter. That's for January, we're not even talking about March or April. And so I would say I definitely have, theoretically, you have all the way up until January, February to really make a decision. And that's when application times start opening. Some of them maybe even a little bit later if it's like a May start to the market. And maybe that's a good point where depending on whatever the application fee is, you start applying to multiple markets. And then when it comes down to the wire, you're like, all right, I've been accepted into these three. So now it's time to make a decision. But I think, but I think in my unique position where I'm hoping that next year will be significantly different, both in what we can produce and then ultimately what we can sell. And so if we were in year 5 or 6 and we had our rhythm and we knew what we were doing, it'd be like, let's go ahead and just make our decision and then plan for that based upon what other people we know are going to be bringing. I think that's a little different picture. But for me, it probably would be better to decide where I'm going to go around the time that I'm deciding what I'm going to do in the spring, if that makes sense. So it's as we're crop planning for a particular direction. Like maybe we decide, man, I would love to be able to sleep in on Saturdays, or not having a Saturday off for 90% of the year sucks. Like maybe we just need to double down on restaurants and become a more wholesale farm. And then if that's the case, then we're probably going to change the style of production that we do. And I don't see us going that direction. I feel like I'm too good with people to be relegated to just selling wholesale. But I would ultimately say whenever we end up solidifying the crop plan for 25 is when we solidify at least where we would want to go. Because things change, you don't
Yeah.
get accepted, so on and so forth.
So the next 4 months is really to help you make that decision for 2025. You'll get to see 4 months of data at your
Yeah.
current farmer's market. You'll get to explore the whole chef thing a little more and see if there's any
Mhm.
traction picking up there. So you can go into early 2025, potentially at this winter market. So getting a kind of your foot in the door, getting a taste of that. So if we're fast forwarding way ahead to mid-January, you've seen a little bit of this other winter market. You got a full year of data set on your current market, where you are at chefs. You can go there. But so now it's gaming scenarios in your head, probably, right? Like without having to totally commit stuff, try stuff, see what works, explore, and just go from there. But it doesn't sound like there's any immediate action really required to firm things up.
Yeah, and it's also like talking to people, like talk to a kind of a customer slash friend who lives in Monroe, but spends time in Athens because they're significantly closer to each other than I am to Athens versus Monroe. And it's, hey, I'm not making any plans, but if I were hypothetically, and I were to do the Athens market next year, how apt would you be to make the drive? And then it's just try to get an idea. Because if it's one that's like, oh no, we would definitely not go. And then not that it's gonna sway me one way or the other, but it's like, all right, maybe I need to consider the fact that this sort of loyal customer base that I've built at this market may not follow me, and I might have to completely start over from square one, at least as far as like a customer base is concerned. Or
Service them, like, outside of the market? Could you say, "Hey, we have to move to Athens. If you still wanna get my stuff, I could have a drop off or something?"
I could. As far as the drop off to that area because I'm at the market has been completely. I think I've offered the pickup at the Monroe market for 2.5 months now, and I think I can count 4 pickup orders I've had in the entire time.
Yeah.
And so I think because I'm there, it's like, why would I do a pickup order at the market or in the area? I come to the market because I like to come to the market. And so now maybe it'll change because yeah, those people that are like, we come just for your stuff. We come for your salad mix. Maybe they would change their tune if I'm not going to be here. You can do that. And maybe I can hit both markets in that way without doing both farmers markets. But it's also, we're talking like a 35-minute drive. Like it's not, at least in this part of the country, like you have to drive that far to get just about anywhere. And so it might not be that big of a stretch unless they just enjoy the 5-minute drive down the road to be in downtown Monroe and just walk around in the cool part of the morning. Is that why they come to the market, or do they come to the market because they're coming for vegetables and they're coming to support local ag? I'm trying to put out those feelers and throw out the, hey, I'm asking for a friend. Here's a hypothetical. What do you think? Kind of do my, like, poll my regulars just to get an idea on how they might respond to me leaving. Or if it's, oh my God, I can't believe you're going to leave. It's my whole world's coming to an end. Then it's like, all right, maybe I need to consider that. Maybe it is worth it for me to bring a limited amount to the Monroe market and pay somebody just to kind of service those regulars so I don't lose them. Or is it that whatever sales I generate at this new market would so far outpace that it's almost like, not that those people don't matter, but at the end of the day, like I've way made up and then some for those sales that I've lost, that it doesn't really matter. And farms come and go and they'll find their veg elsewhere.
What do you think you could make if you switched? Assume you figure out production, that type of thing. Do you have any guesstimates?
I really don't. This market is on par with the markets that places like Crystal Organic and other farms used to do when they were like full blown market farms. And they're in the $2,000 to $3,000 Saturday range. A couple of the farms that are at this market are like big time. Like they do 3 big farmers markets every Saturday, like 2 in Atlanta and 1 in Athens. Plus they have a CSA, plus they're doing wholesale, plus they're doing on farm. Like they do so much. And so for them, theoretically, you would assume if they have 2 or 3 like booth spaces. So they're doing enough volume for them to make it worth it. So you would imagine that the sales opportunities are probably pretty serious.
What are
I
your
would,
thoughts
yeah.
on going into a new market of fresh where you got big dogs like that and you're coming in as a new guy, a smaller guy?
Oh, it's terrifying. Just because I think in my email to you, I said it's like going from AAA up to the majors. You're technically a professional, been doing this for a year, making money. It's just your living. You deliver week in and week out. But then but that's the minors. So you're playing in, I don't know, some city like Lakeland, Florida or wherever, or Chattanooga, like where the 3A team was that I grew up watching. And then you're talking about, oh no, now you're in Boston, or I think Chattanooga team, I think they're LA. So now you're playing for the Dodgers. Like you're batting 2 spaces behind Otani. And you're like, oh my God, this is the real deal. Like I thought I was I thought I knew what I was doing, but this is on a completely different level. And maybe I'm blowing it out of proportion, but that's how it feels, that it's, oh yeah, like this was the minors and now we're in the bigs. And so I could be completely wrong. It could just be like, oh no, like a farmer's market's a farmer's market and I know what I'm doing and people like my stuff. And yeah, I'm definitely not as big as these other guys are, but at the end of the day, like they all started out when they were small and there's other small farmers and we'll just eventually just find our place in the lineup and we'll serve our role and make our money and we'll go home.
On a sports aside, it's funny how true that is. I was at an Angels game last week and they put the stats up on the board when a guy comes out to bat and it's led his high voted most valuable senior on his high school team, batted 677 with 55 home runs and also had a 1.5 ERA. And you look at his major league batting
Yeah.
average and it's 206 or
Yeah.
like,
Like all of those guys were the best ball players on their team, wherever they came from, no matter how
yeah.
good or bad they are in the majors.
Yeah, voted best college catcher in the ACC, batting 233. And it's okay, but you're right. That's the trade-off here, right? It's easy on one hand to fixate on, wow, look where we could play. We could be there. And you could be
Hmm.
a small fish in a big pond that hopefully eventually becomes a big fish in the big pond. Or you
Yeah.
can be a bigger fish in the small pond, but you're never getting any bigger because there's not enough to eat. And that's the whole scary trade-off of this. Or you go and you just can't produce enough, or you got to carve out a niche, right? Do you go into a market with a strategy of trying to differentiate against the bigger farms? Do you just roll up and sell what you sell and tell your story and hopefully people resonate, that type of thing? It's tricky. I think that's very hard. The allure of more sales is obviously there. I think from afar, you take the option that gives you the chance to make the most money possible and give
Yeah.
yourself like a chance to blow it. Like, hey, I'd
Mhm.
rather play for the Dodgers and they put me in for 20 games and I figure out if I can hit or not versus leading double A Duluth, Minnesota in batting average and making $36,000 a year.
Yeah, I think about the guy that played center for the Bengals that went to my high school, like, 25 years before me. I can still vividly see his picture in his Bengals uniform on the, like, top of the wall above the trophy case in the hallway at the school, and it's nobody knows who he was. He probably played 1 season or whatever, but it's because he made it to the, like, highest level that you can make it to. That was his claim to fame, and obviously, I know football doesn't have the same thing, but there's dozens of other guys that played college ball who probably had a far more illustrious college career that nobody cares about. But because this one dude happened to maybe catch it on a good year where they were down a center. And so he was able to get drafted and go play in Cincinnati. Like it just worked out. And so, yeah, for me, it's just, do I just hang out at this one market and make an honest living for the next however many years? Like some of the folks that have been there for 10 years and it's, dude, like I'm already out selling you, and do I just be happy with what I have and be the standout and it's comfortable and it's easy and maybe we can increase sales and maybe we can build the market as we go? Or do we just go for it and just say, worst case scenario, you can always come back or you can always do a different one. But this might be the opportunity to really take it to the next level. And also, too, who are you rubbing elbows with? Because, I'm going from other people that are like, I just went full time, I'm figuring it out, just like I am, to, man, we've been kicking butt for 15 years and we've got like a massive crew and we're doing 3 farmers markets a Saturday. So, man, what can you learn from cracking a beer with those guys after a market? So it's even if it's just for access, because I'm not going to get to talk to those guys any other time during the week because we're all doing our own thing. But maybe it's a chance to get a little bit of knowledge, or a little bit of experience, or even just a little bit of attaboy. Hey, man, I remember when I was just like you and you're killing it, you're doing it, keep it up. That's enough kind of like fuel for the fire to really get you going. And so it's just almost, if I have the chance to do it, why not? And I almost even wonder if I would have just been ballsy enough to just try it this year. Like if I would have just been crazy enough to be like, if I get in and we'll just see, and maybe I'm like the tiniest minnow in Lake Superior, but hey, we're in it. We'll try it and just see. And maybe I would have been equally or even more successful. But either way, I feel like it's at least worth a shot just to see where we can go.
Yeah, you have the promise of upside, the allure of upside, right? It's, hey, let's go west. Let's get on this ship and sail into the unknown sea and find riches somewhere. We don't know what we're going to find, but there is, humans are driven by that. Let me find something out there type exploration. The other thing is, it's what's more stressful, barely getting by, or I don't know where you fit on the barely getting by scale, but there's, hey, we're getting by, but we're not like thriving. It's one thing to be like, hey, we're Pablo Escobar. We have so much money, we're burying it in holes in the ground so nobody can find it. The other end is, yeah, like we make a living, but it's stressful, it's tight. That's one type of stress. The other stress is you go somewhere new, you're the new guy, nobody knows you. Maybe there's assholes there. Maybe the customers don't do it. Maybe your sales are worse. That's another type of stress. It's what type of stress do you want to deal with? Because both situations are going to have it. They're very different.
Hmm.
One has one upside, one's comfortable and known, but it's stressful. The other one, where do you feel comfortable living? And it just, I think part of the decision, I imagine, is I don't know how long I could do this or we as a family could do this. If your sales stayed the same and averaged out at $650 a week for the next 3 years, are
Oh
you
man,
paid farming and life at the end of 3 years?
unless we can really get like additional sales going, yeah, we really killing it with chefs and stuff. Like probably not. There's no way that we can. That's the nervous feeling of I go full time because there's some things that have been said and some potential offers that have been made that would make it much easier to say, let's just take the leap. But then it's also, but if we take the leap and fall is just like the summer is, I'm screwed. That was a horrible decision. Now, granted, we could take the leap and increase production and we make it up elsewhere because I'm also like refusing to quit and we'll sell it come hell or high water. We'll find a place to sell it. That's one of those things. It's, man, is this keeping me from being able to just solely focus on this as my main source of income? And that's like a hard question to answer. Could this be a full-time gig? Because the other person who does it full time at the market, or at least that I know of that really does it full time, she's doing 2 other farmers markets and selling to a co-op and doing on-farm sales. And so this market is only like a quarter of her sales. And I feel like I'm probably selling more than she is at this market. And so it's if this market's only a quarter of her sales doing full time, then it's dang. What would this only end up being a third of my sales? And I have to make up 2/3 of it doing wholesale or find another semi okay farmer's market, and then I'm having to pay somebody and think about a whole other place to sell and all that sort of stuff, as opposed to just like finding one amazing kick-ass market and then go from there. And so
Well, here
the
question.
unknown of what things are gonna look like really does it limits what my future potential could be.
Yeah, here's a this comes under your holistic context. Where do you want to be in life, or where does your business fit into the rest of your life? If you can only do this farm part time, is that a win in life or no?
For me,
What do
no.
you
Yeah, for me, no. I'm such an all in or all out type guy that it's like the part-time thing is just the trying to not be stupid and take care of my family until we can get it to be a full-time thing.
it's a step.
So
It's a
it's a
step,
step.
not
It's a
a
means to an
permanent.
end. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
For better or for worse, that's just I know myself. That's just how I am. And as of right now, granted, if I was working a different job and I was making amazing money and this didn't have to like really pay me, maybe we'd be different. And it's a fun extra. But then again, all of the stress that comes along with it, regardless of what you're making, then it'd be like, well, then screw this. It's not even worth it anyway. So let's just have a garden. So more more than likely, it's always going to be the end result will be me doing this full time, and this is what I do.
if it's not full time, it's nothing.
Basically, it's just kind
Okay.
of how I'm wired.
So thinking ahead, regardless, with the farmer's market being the wild card, like we know you're not going to do a CSA, or most likely not, right? That's
Probably not. No.
the farmer's market is the model. I'm thinking, all right, the best thing you can possibly do between now and January is to get as many restaurant sales as possible to hedge yourself against
Mm,
farmer's market risk. The more restaurant sales you have, the less farmer's market forces you into making an economic decision. Because if you had $500 a week in restaurant sales, it's, oh, okay, we can deal with this type of market at Monroe, or we can go to Athens and, hey, if it's great, awesome. If it's slow, we have a floor. And then it comes down to just execution and making sure you can deliver what you need it for all the customers involved. So it's like that's the one that's what you have in cards in your deck that you can play. It's stack up as many restaurant customers as you can, because that gives you something then you can carry around with you to whatever market you're at. And that's at
yeah.
least I don't want to say a known because restaurants come and go, but it's not like a brand new market where, hey, that could be amazing. It could be terrible.
Yeah. And I can almost guarantee every restaurant I've worked with and any restaurant that's ever worked with local farmers, they've probably seen many come and go. And so if I'm like, hey, man, sorry, doing this market, I'm already running into that. Like I had a chef like, oh, he didn't have any no tomatoes for me. And sorry, man, like I grow enough to sell to market, and that's my main thing. And so I'm honest with him. It's I make more money. I don't say it this way, but what I'm essentially saying is I make more money selling this at the market than I'm selling it to you. So I'm not going to sell it to you. And so I guess push comes to shove, if I can add a couple more restaurants or however many I can, as many as I can like comfortably deliver, But then we come into March or April and it's, oh man, I'm definitely doing this. Production is way better. And I just like, hey man, sorry. Really appreciate that you've supported us and you've done this, but it's not really worth the drive anymore. I can make my money elsewhere. However, you say it in a nice flowery way to not sound like a butthole. And then you just go and sell at the market and sell it for retail and so on and so forth. And so yeah, that definitely gives you, it's much better to plan for that as opposed to where I'm at now, where it's, oh crap, I'm growing more than I can sell. I have to find some places to offload it. And then
Yeah.
you're coming from a place of desperation and need as opposed to a place of confidence. And you have your own things that you can leverage as opposed to being desperate.
The good problem is you have too many customers. I got restaurants and then this market takes off and it's going through the
Yeah.
roof and it's holy cow, I need to figure out production. That's a much easier problem to solve because you can, you know, source from Crystal Organic or something like for restaurants, I'm sure. So you can dial up more production, you can hire somebody. Like that's the better problem to have than the problem of I produce what I produce, but I don't have anywhere to move it. I think.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's like a me problem or if that's just a farming problem in general. Because Nicholas always says like, selling it will never be a problem. You just have to grow it. But I hear most everyone else say, I can grow it, but man, it's so hard to find sales. And so I don't know if that's because I'm like extroverted and like a natural salesman and have like a marketing and sales background or what. But yeah, it feels like my production is my limiting factor at the moment. And if I can get that going, it doesn't really matter which direction I go. We're gonna make it work. But I have to grow more because if I don't have enough to sell, it doesn't matter who I sell it to. It's like a ceiling that I keep hitting it week after week.
Yeah, one other thing he talks on here, the country club in Atlanta, you brought some stuff to with a lot of potential there. Edible flowers being one thing where that's an option. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see your journey into restaurants and where that goes, how it drives product growth, how it drives production, staffing, all those types of things. When you think ahead, so this January market, is that a scaled down version? Because I'm trying like, what's the deal on that? They just have is that a shorter, smaller version of what they would have in the summer?
I think I'm honestly not really sure. I knew that they did a winter market, but it wasn't like top of mind. They sent me that message on Instagram. I was like, oh, forgot they did that. Oh, that'd be cool. That's perfect timing. So yeah, I don't know if it's just like less farms, like maybe some of the bigger farms, like they take a break,
Yeah,
which
that's
God,
probably it,
that
right?
that sounds awesome. Sounds awesome to take them a couple months off. Then so maybe it's like limited, or because of just weather and temperature and time. Maybe it's like they scale back because there's less people. I don't really know because yeah, there's not. I'm pretty sure every other farmer's market is like May to December or April to November, that or April to December time slot. And so I think this is pretty unique that they have anything at that point of the year. So I don't know if it's smaller or there's just less people or it's just easier to section it off as its own dedicated thing because maybe they take a break for December and then they take a break in March as people are ramping up or scaling down. I don't really know. I don't have a lot of great answers for that, but it's an opportunity to sell the way that I know I can sell the best. And so it's if I can get in, I'd rather bank on being able to be at a place that they're marketing, "Hey, come out and buy local fresh produce," and then I can do what I'm good at, as opposed to me trying to find individual people that are willing to join our online store and do that, or hopefully I can sell enough stuff to restaurants. At the end of the day, even if I, like, take a break from markets and I just do restaurant sales through the winter, and maybe we set enough aside for spring and fall that we can just do that through the winter and kind of scale back. That's always an option too. I don't necessarily I don't ultimately wanna be full tilt through the winter. I would love to be able to have some time to just pull back and rest, especially in the most hectic, chaotic time of the year. But just knowing that I'll have an opportunity to sell the way that I know that I can sell the best, I think it's gonna be worth a shot regardless of how it works out. It can't be any worse than what we're doing now.
Yeah, that one seems like a no-brainer. Because why I'm thinking of that too is you probably have to start planning for that now, right? Like, you have to get crops for that time period in the ground probably by September to get them up to size. Because there's not much growth in, like, October, November, December. So if you want stuff to harvest
Yeah.
in full, don't that's gotta start that work's gotta start now.
Yeah, it's it's a little unknown. I'm not super confident about what winter will be like. At Crystal, we were harvesting stuff consistently through the winter. Not, oh, we're gonna harvest this kale one time and then we're done. We let it grow all the way until February and then we pick it then and then it's summer. It's like, no, we're lightly picking the same areas time and time again. And obviously we're low enough latitude that our between our day length and our lack of like super frigid temperatures, like stuff will continue to grow. I was harvesting salad mix and kale and stuff and broccolini through the winter last year. So stuff will be continue to grow. Now, if I'm talking about seeding new beds or transplanting new beds, yeah, I think more or less I'm going to have stuff in the ground for winter. Yeah, September, October at the latest to just to have stuff to harvest from. There's not going to be a whole lot of, oh, we're done with salad. Let's get our next succession in. I think, unless it's in the tunnel. But for the most part, yeah, I think we're going to have it in middle of fall at the latest to have anything for January, February.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be nice to get if they're otherwise dead months, right? No other farmer's market, you pull in 6, 7, 8, 900 bucks in total
Oh,
produce
man.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge, huge. And then maybe that opens the door. You go there full time, and the rest is history. And boom, you're off to the races.
Yeah. It's just a matter of can we keep it up? That's like the hard part. Like, I think ideally, because I had this conversation with myself the other day, ideally, it would be like, all right, let's finish off this year part time. Let's get through a full season of doing it part time, get an idea of what this is going to look like, what we're capable of, what the land will produce. And then in the spring, we make the leap. But it's can I manage to keep this up part time without scooting so close to burnout? Because we're talking about increasing production, but without increasing time, which is like, oh man, I already feel like I don't really have time for my current production. And so it's that sort of uncomfortable rub of can we make it through the rest of the year part time, which would probably be the safe bet, and then make that decision in the spring if we know we're going to be at the new market and we know what we're capable of and we know what we can hit those numbers and it's still going to require a little bit of risk, but it's calculated risk. Or is it
Yeah.
I need the time to increase the production, so we just have to bite the bullet, take the leap, and hope to God that winter is good enough that we can keep things going. And then in the spring, then we know that it's gonna be good. So that's the rub right now. That's the decision that it feels like is in front of me. It's like really grind and hate it through the rest of the year potentially for security sake, or do we take the leap of faith and potentially kill it? It's that's I feel like that's always the decision at the end of the day, at least starting out.
Yeah. You gotta, I think it's always what's the risk of going full time is you don't earn enough fast enough and you get yourself in a hole real quick that you can't dig out of. And the stress and of that just hurts everything. The risk of
Yeah.
staying part time and doing it is well, you can't produce enough. Not really a problem yet. And
Yeah.
burnout, always a problem, but that seems like that could be managed. That's why I think it's like key to getting those restaurant sales as much as you can in the near term between now and then. It just gives you that buffer, right? So you can just
Mhm.
make a decision from a as comfortable a financial standpoint as you can on it. Oh, but this is the tough part, right? Of any new business. It's like us. If I wanted to increase my sales by 50% next year, like I got to try a bunch of stuff and spend money doing it. Some of it'll work, some of it won't work. And it's just, it's not just a farm thing. It's every business out there is facing these challenges. And I wish there was an easier way. If there was, everybody would own their own business and we'd be
Yeah, yeah,
rich.
yeah, and unfortunately, I feel like with a lot of I had a conversation today when I dropped stuff off to, an establishment that I sell to. I have a conversation with the owner and they're in the same boat. It's, man, I really would love to not work in the business as much as I do so I can work on the business. But yeah, it's, if I scale back, I have to hire someone to fill that void, and I can't afford to hire someone unless me scaling back can generate enough sales to justify that new hire. And so it's, for me, it's like the new hire is myself part-time. And so but at the end of the day, it's maybe, unless you're like a Fortune 500 company, if you're talking about trying to increase sales, it's because you're trying to fill a gap somewhere. For the most part, if Modern Grower was making good sales and everything was comfortable and everything was great and there's no problem, you probably wouldn't be like, let's increase sales by 50% next year. It's usually, there's a rub. It could be a little bit better. I could work a little bit less. We could do this or that, whatever. And there's always going to be a reb that's going to be the motivator to increase the business in some form or fashion. And I think it's like the reb leads to the desire to increase things. And that increase is going to only come from some level of calculated risk that could work and could not. And yeah, and it's just, for me, that risk right now is basically, do I go full time? Because I know I can't afford the risk of hiring someone, because that's like a guaranteed throwing money at hourly wages every single week. I can't afford that. But I might be able to get away with just not paying myself as much, which would basically mean not bringing as much in to cover our living expenses. But that might be a calculated risk that we can manage in a way that hiring someone else could, because everyone's, you need some help on the farm. Yeah, that's great. Are you going to pay them? And I think we're in this sort of stage of doing the risk math and determining, like, is this a safer bet? Is this a more risky bet? And then you just have to decide, where's that threshold of risk, and say, like, all right, I think we're willing to take on this level of risk. Now let's execute.
Yeah, it's all risky. It's just, where's the risk falling and what are you most
Yeah.
comfortable with? And I think it's hard at this stage. And in some ways, we're at that stage too. If you don't necessarily make enough to hire to fill the positions you need to fill,
Mhm.
and you're not making a little enough where you're not even considering it. Or so it's, hey, if we're just having a lemonade stand, I don't need to hire anybody. Like, I'll just do the work myself. It's no big deal. It's not a burden. But you're like, you need more labor hours,
Mhm.
but you don't make enough to make it easy to pay for those labor hours, whether that's paying you or paying somebody else. So you get caught in that trap. So it's like, how do you get revenue up as much as possible to make the hiring decision easy?
Yep.
And that's the thought of, like, you hire yourself, right? You hire yourself, you add 20 hours of your time to the farm a week, and hopefully the difference in that is much greater than what you would make in a part-time job.
Yeah. Yeah, the potential upside is way higher. Because even right now, if you look at my hourly rate based upon the hours that I work, and then you look at sales. Now, granted, obviously there's operating costs, so you have to do a lot of work, but it's more or less tit for tat. Like, I'm not making more doing one versus the other at the moment. It's more of the same. But the problem is, one is steady and guaranteed, whether I drive a tractor into the lake or I'm the greatest employee ever. It's a guaranteed paycheck every week, as opposed to the other one has a much higher upside, but it could potentially, driving the tractor into the lake could mean the difference between winning or
Eviction
losing.
and
Yeah. And so there's much higher upside to hiring yourself. Plus, I'm probably the best employee I could hire. Like, I know the farm better than anybody else because I'm there. And it would be the wisest use of the investment would be to, hire myself to do more work. It's just a matter of that also, the best decision also comes with the greatest risk. And so that's the rub. But funny enough, just serendipitously, I jokingly said something about, you need help at the farm. And so, are you going to pay him? Actually, I had a conversation with a business owner the other day who mentioned something about their son working for me, who's 16. And I'll pay him if they come work for you. And they just text me and were like, hey, can I start working with you next week? I don't know. So maybe I will get an employee that someone else will pay for. We'll see how that shakes down. I'll let you know in a future episode.
Yeah, I'm sending you to labor camp, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The nice thing about hiring yourself is you're much easier to fire than an employee and then go rehire, get yourself rehired somewhere else, right,
Yeah.
if it doesn't work. Yeah. You think this is the reality for anyone with a side hustle, looking to go full-time job to part-time on the farm, looking to go full-time on the farm? There is zero clear answers. You're never going to see that light on the horizon or something coming up out of the mountain saying that's the sign for me. It's a whole bunch of foggy, muddled up garbage. And you got to try and interpret that and just go with your gut. And I think hearing you and when I think about this and what I've been through, it's just what are you comfortable with?
Yeah.
All the situations are not going to have lack of information. They're all going to have downside. They're all going to have upside. They're all going to have risk. Just which one feels the best to you? And
Yeah.
sometimes that's probably like if it's all equal, it's just which one can I live with if I go down that path? And maybe there's part of you that's, look, if I couldn't try this full time, what's the point? Like, at least if I go full time, I give it a shot. It doesn't work. I tried it. That was it. Versus staying part time for the next 5 years. And that just really didn't do it for me.
Yeah. It's the Ron Swanson quote. Never half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. And I don't want to spend the next 5 years half-assing it. I'd rather just bite the bullet and whole-ass it and see where it goes.